This meeting is being recorded.
So greetings to everyone joining us tonight for our first event of the year as the Virginia Worker in 2023. We have more events to come, and we hope you will continue to join us as we host guest speakers presenting on a range of topics covering the history of class struggle in Virginia and beyond. Our goal as the Virginia Worker is to build a distinctly pro-worker and independent ideological pole of attraction for the Virginia working class, which we do not see existing otherwise in our state. We're comprised of groups across the state who emphasize organizing workers independently from capitalist parties and their auxiliary organizations, which promote a class collaborationist agenda to the detriment of the Virginia workers. Our website is meant to popularize the struggles, campaigns, reports, and debate across the state affecting Virginia workers. We welcome all contributions that fall in line with our mission statement, which you can find at thevirginiaworker.com. So tonight we're joined by Nick and Laura with the Workers' Party of Massachusetts, and they're going to be presenting on their efforts at running campaigns and actually building out like an independent workers' party when it is so normalized for socialist, communists, or Marxists to either reject electoral efforts or to liquidate into the Democrat Party like the DSA does. So without further ado, I'll pass it along here to Laura and Nick.
Hello, I'm Laura Saylor, and I'm in Mansfield, Massachusetts. And Nick and myself and several other local people decided to form the Workers' Party. Back at the end of 2019, we got going in 2020. The reason for it is because where we're located, most of the left-wing activity is located in Boston. It's very difficult for people in the suburbs to participate in any kind of left-wing action. We wanted to run candidates to promote our platform, and I will go to Nick and let him kind of let you know how we got that going.
All right. Hi, everyone. And yeah, thanks for having us here, letting us talk about the party. My name's Nick Giannone. I'm a union Boilermaker. I've been a communist in the Boston area in a variety of different groups and tendencies since the 90s. Not going to get too much into my political history, but it took a lot of twists and turns to get to the point of like wanting to do something like run candidates, because it's not always considered to be congruent with revolutionary activity. So like Laura mentioned, we've come to have a problem with what we've termed commuter activism in the Boston area. Boston is very much a college town, and there are a certain amount of socialist groups that generally not entirely, but mostly focus on the fact that there's a bunch of students that come in every year and a bunch of students graduate every year. And working class people who want to get involved in the socialist movement are generally forced to accommodate ourselves to the academic calendar and, groups that focus more on students than workers. So after years of doing that, a lot of us have kind of gotten in touch with each other out around in the working class suburbs. And Laura was in the Socialist Party for a while. I was in the Communist Party most recently before the Workers' Party. Both of those ended kind of badly for us. Won't get into it too much, but how the left can be. But yeah, we started talking. We had some other working class people around us, people in some different unions. Longshoremen, elevator constructors, Laura and Sarah Forbes were both United Food and Commercial Workers at Stop and Shop at the time. People from around the state with a variety of tendencies, and we started putting together a list of principles, basic revolutionary socialist principles, and then a set of demands coming off of that. We did kind of a like circular process of passing it around, getting as much input as we could. And then we started beginning the process of becoming a political designation in Massachusetts. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Laura? And
Yes, we had to get signatures to send to the Secretary of State's office. To become a political designation, you're not an official party yet. However, people can register to vote as Workers' Party members rather than a Democrat or a Republican. We can run candidates. If we get, I don't recall what the percentages of the vote to become an
3%.
official party. It's 3, yeah. In a statewide race, then we become an official party. So, you know, we decided to go the electoral route, and we held a convention. We built some locals. We had first off was Nick south of Boston local. And then I went a little further south into what we call the stadium area, which is where Gillette Stadium and all that is. And we've since built into Western Massachusetts. We have at-large people in the Worcester area, in the Boston area. And I believe, do we have any in Middlesex?
We've got a bunch of contacts up in the North Shore now.
Yep.
Nothing really coming together yet, but we had someone new sign up today that I got to talk to you about later, who I think is going to be good up in Lowell. So yeah, we've actually had, I haven't really updated. We have about 350 people who have gotten in touch with us over the past year or so, trying to get involved in us. Some people just send the email and then never respond to any follow-up. But we've got people all over the state in like working class communities that are generally unorganized. And you know, getting back to the commuter activism thing. I mean, you can be a Democrat anywhere in this country. You can be a right winger anywhere in this country. But to be a leftist, it seems like you have to be you know, blessed with you know, good geography. And you know, that's something we really want to change. And the focus on electoral work has given us kind of a common statewide task. You know, all of us have been involved in other mass movements for years, but having a statewide party that runs candidates that tie all the issues together, it's really given people who are normally kind of isolated, you know, something to do, whether it's even just putting a Workers' Party lawn sign in their yard during the political campaign, and, you know, allowing other people to get in touch with them, you know, like pretty much just raising a socialist flag across the state and seeing who rallies to it. So
This is true. And, even on election day, doing the standouts, I had people approach me, neighbors, and say, when I saw you guys standing out there with your signs, I went in and I brought my kids and we voted for you. You know, so I think it's an excellent way to bring people into the movement that otherwise wouldn't, you know, have the motivation to do so, to drive into Boston or to join a Zoom with people they don't know. And I'm really quite happy with our success so far this year. I think that comes off in Nick's campaign in 2020. Nick ran for office. If you want to talk about that, that was kind of a kickoff because we didn't have our designation yet. But
yeah, that was so 2020, right at the beginning of the year, we decided to launch the Workers' Party. Me and another member took out nomination papers, but right around then COVID hit, which made it nearly impossible to gather signatures. It was only 150 signatures to get on the ballot as a state rep candidate, but in March of 2020, nobody wanted to talk to a stranger on the street or touch their pen. So we had to get really creative. James, our other candidate, didn't get enough signatures, but we just barely squeaked by on that one. I got to run against a local Democrat. There had been a highway blockade in Boston. I'm not sure when it was. Was that 2017 or? It it was in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. It upset a lot of reactionaries in the area, and our local Democratic state rep was caught in traffic that day, and while he was there, he drafted some legislation that would make it a felony to block traffic as a protest. So, this guy who's never had anything to say, against racism got mildly inconvenienced at an anti-racist protest and decided to make something out of it. So he was a good Democratic target to run against. And there was a Republican in the race, but it ended up, I got just about 5% in that race. And this was running solidly as a socialist candidate. One thing we've been doing with our campaigns is actually doing targeted mailings. As a candidate in Massachusetts, you have access to the voter list. And the voter list has people's party registration and political designation registration. And like Laura mentioned, we're a political designation. There's also the Green Party, the Libertarians. We have a Pirate Party in Massachusetts. There's a socialist designation, even though the Socialist Party doesn't really function here. But we mailed thousands of postcards with sections of our program to a lot of these people. People from the Green Party got in touch with us saying they liked our program better. Some old timer from the Socialist Labor Party, the old De Leonis Party, who was a registered socialist. We mailed him a postcard. He got in touch with us, was excited to hear that there was candidates running. But really putting socialist politics out there, targeting housing projects, the more low income rental areas. We ended up getting, it wasn't just 5%, it was like 1,300 people in the town. So, that's a pretty good sign for socialist politics. And we kind of gained on that this time around. Laura, you had just about 5% in your campaign too, right?
I got 3.1%.
All right.
So
That
I
was a
did
big
better.
area.
I did better than 3%, but I also keep in mind that my campaign spent less than $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
The bulk of it was spent getting posters printed, but that's I got 3.1%. Brandon did quite well. He got over 20%.
Yeah.
Yes. And you did over 5, I believe, right? You got just under
0.9. No, it was under 3% because I didn't break the 3% mark. But yeah, Laura mentioned Brandon Griffin got, I actually have it here. I believe it was almost 25% of the vote. It was a fun experiment this time around because we had Brandon Griffin was running against a Republican. There was no Democrat in the race. So we got to see a little bit of how many Democrats we could poll towards a open socialist and how many Democrats would embrace a right-wing candidate. And, we, I feel pretty good about the number of people who, 25% of people in what's considered a very right-wing area of Massachusetts, where the right-wing gubernatorial candidate had a stronghold. So, there's the stereotypes aren't entirely true. Laura got to run in a 3-way race. There was a Democrat and a Republican.
A Republican at the last minute.
Yes.
Yes.
The Democrat was a pro-cop. He's allegedly a pro-labor candidate, but one of those pro-labor candidates who considers police unions part of the labor movement.
Wasn't it the IBEW, Nick, that met with Marty Walsh and Biden the night that the railroad workers were unionized? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was Paul Feeney's. That's what Paul Feeney's union. That's Paul Feeney is an officer in that union.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to tell you what Democrat union politics.
And Yeah, my statewide race was a 5-way race. We got to see, it was Democrat, Republican. There was a Green, well, Massachusetts is Green Rainbow Party, basically the Green Party, a Libertarian and Workers Party. So we got to see how we did. We beat the Libertarian. We I thought we'd be more of a competition against the Green, but they had another candidate that ran a 3-way race, and they both polled just under 3%. Our candidacy didn't seem to poll votes from the Green Party. We seemed to get them mostly from somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, coming out of the elections, I don't know if, I'm sure people have more specific questions during the discussion, but we've really got an opportunity now to consolidate the organization. We've got, like I mentioned before, a bunch of contacts around the state that we've been trying to group together into new locals. Basically, any 3 members that live in a area together can ask to form a local. So hopefully we'll be setting up more of them around the state soon. We're planning for our statewide convention in April. We want to update some of our political demands, come up with a better statewide structure as we grow. You know, we need more like a statewide representative body. We've been experimenting with different forms of bureaucracy, and you know, the theory and practice don't always add up, although we've been, you know, functioning, you know, having the mild growing pains, but, you know, just got to sit down and reflect on some of that a little bit. And we really, we're trying to focus on a lot of our mass movement work. Laura's been doing a lot of excellent work around police abolition and defunding the police. We've got a great working group coming together, working on a whole bunch of things around the state. We've got an eco-socialist group coming together, trying to deal with some of the issues, specifically as how a lot of environmental issues relate to workers, and housing issues, which are, you know, 2 like places they really intersection in Massachusetts. We also, along with that, have a housing group coming together, housing and tenants' rights. I know we got someone in the audience here who's been doing some good work on that. I'm trying to pull together a labor commission of all of our union members and people active in the labor movement within the party, but there's been a lot of other shit going on, and haven't really pulled that together yet, but that's in the works. And we've been trying to do more political education this year. We just did a really good discussion of the Communist Manifesto on the South Shore. We're doing one on Reform or Revolution next month. I'm pretty sure Western Mass has started doing some political education as well, and Laura's local too. So this year we don't really have odd years in Massachusetts are generally municipal elections. We're not really focused on running candidates for municipal elections until we can build really strong locals. We like the statewide candidacies because you can run as a party. Municipal elections in Massachusetts are nonpartisan. There's no ballot line. It's just your name. So it's really hard to push socialist politics. But yeah, I'm going to let Laura actually talk a little bit about some of the police abolition work she's been doing, because
well,
it's
I think
extensive.
I think that what really got my campaign going and what got me the most attention was back in the spring, one of the select board members in my town happened to mention that he was a little bit disturbed about the fact that the police chief had been missing for about a year and was still being paid. So we kind of took that and ran with it. And I called the select board member. I talked to Nick. We did a Zoom call. And we thought we would publicize that and kind of bring it to public attention and maybe bring pressure to figure out why. They had just raised property taxes. COVID was, you know, still a thing. So Nick said, why don't we do a milk carton? And this is what we did. And we hung it all over town. I have a friend of mine that gets up very early in the morning, and over at the MBTA's train station, at intersections, around coffee shops, on light poles, on places where truckers go in and get their loads. And every day for about a month and a half, the police would go right behind him and try to rip the posters down. And it got the attention of the local investigative news team, Channel 10, Ryan Kath and Shara Stoll, and they reached out to Nick and asked if they could interview us. And we did. And after that, when people find out where their money is going, when it's in their face, they kind of get kind of mad. He was apparently on leave for having rage issues. He would blow up. He wasn't processing gun permits for people. He was being petty about that. He had previously been sent away to a cop retreat for anger management. And, you know, the town was kind of like, the town government is kind of run like a mob. You know, let's be honest here. And they were kind of caught off balance because they did not want to say why they had him on leave. The town manager, you know, had asked for his help with a DUI. There was all kinds of stuff involved. And it all came out in the wash. And everybody in Mansfield was irate. Eventually, you know, Channel 10 did several follow-up interviews. Sellon did his own interview. In Sellon's interview, they asked him if he had an anger management problem, and he said no. He also said on the news, they said, well, why do you think people are so irate about this? And he said, you know, we are a paramilitary organization. And people like us know that. We're aware of that fact. But the general public doesn't often think about that. And when they see their police chief saying that on the news, it kind of strikes a chord. They agreed to release their investigation into him. He was found unfit to serve. Unfortunately, the town is still paying his salary as he fights it. And the town is paying 2 police chiefs. That got me quite a bit of, you know, coverage in the media and in public. And it also gave me an opening to talk to people, neighbors and people in the community and people in my district about, you know, hey, does this not bother you? And it kind of went from there. So that's kind of what that did. It was kind of a big deal here. And we all did it together, and it was great. I mean, on the bottom of the poster, it has a police non-emergency number on it. So I think they still stew about that. And we, so that got our police defund and abolition working group kind of going. And there's the problem with police defund and abolition is there's always so much work. There's no shortage. You wake up every morning, you see something else horrifying that you have to kind of say, wait a minute, we got to take a look at what's going on here. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I don't know. I think that we got quite a bit of exposure that way. So you take an issue and tie it to the party. I mean, what our demands with Chief Sellon would be what they are for the Workers' Party. And you talk to people using our demands and our program and say, well, this is what we think. And why aren't we spending our money on that? And aren't you upset that you're paying for 2 of these? And the guys down, you know, posting Facebook pictures about being at a concert in Alabama. You know, and oddly enough, it wasn't really the conservatives that opposed us. It was the Democrats. It wasn't the Republicans that opposed this. And mostly, I think, because of the money involved and, you know, my taxes. But the Democrats were really hardcore wanting this guy, you know, on his side. And into it, his neighbor across the street caught him the day of election day, municipal election day, not our election day. We went to municipal election day with poster signs. And he went home that night and had a rage fit in his garage that was recorded by his neighbor across the street that wound up in the newspaper. So everybody got to see it. And it wasn't, I mean, you know, he was ranting on and on about he hates this town. He's gonna go after the he's gonna hunt the children of the select board and the town manager down. And it was just a big mess. But we were able to use that to promote the Workers' Party at the same time. And you've got to use what's important to people and what impacts people's lives and material conditions every day. If you're in the middle of a pandemic and people are struggling and prices are going up, and the town is raising your property taxes because, you know, someone can't control themselves, is what it turns into. That resonates with working people and the public. And that's, you know, that's kind of what we did.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something Laura mentioned about the encountering more resistance from the Democrats on that issue with the police chief in Mansfield. I don't know if everyone's aware of the political situation in Massachusetts, but we're essentially a one-party state. The legislature has a Democratic supermajority. We just had a Republican governor, but he's basically widely rejected by the rest of the Republican Party. So we do have it a little lucky in that we don't have to face as much of the lesser evil arguments being put forward out there when it comes to running candidates. But I mean, on principle, even if you know, you live in a state where the Republican Party is strong, we still need working class candidates because the Democrats were incredibly hostile to us, despite their
They were, yeah.
their on pretty much every issue, and even out like gathering signatures to get on the ballot. Our original concerns, you know, being socialists, going out to, I mean, basically grocery stores are where you go in Massachusetts to gather the signatures to get on the ballot. I don't know if people do that in every state, but that's where people generally go in mass. And it's a tough learning curve as a revolutionary communist in the US to go out to some suburban grocery store and gather signatures to get on the ballot. But the most hostile people were Democrats. It was wild. A lot of us started going to like Cambridge and Boston first. Cambridge especially, because Cambridge has a reputation of being the People's Republic of Cambridge.
The
It's
JP
the
Whole
Richmond
Foods.
Republic, the rudest liberals in the world. You know, a lot of people have illusions about being able to like transform the Democratic Party into some kind of tool of liberation, but the people who are, you know, a lot of working class people vote Democrat because there isn't a better choice, but the people who are actually members of the Democratic Party and consider themselves like partisans of that organization, goddamn, some of those are the worst people you'll ever meet, and they're not going to let their shitty capitalist party ever be anything good. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and you can't make a workers' party out of the Democratic Party. Yeah. I don't know if
I mean, the looks that we got on election day at the standouts, I mean, you saw that. It was the Democrats were looking at us like, how dare you, and treated us that way. Yeah.
Well, do you think we should open it up to questions, or?
I think so.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate the overview there, and you sort of hit some answers on questions I was formulating as you were talking here. So yeah, if anybody has any questions for Laura or Nick related to their efforts, just type them in the chat box here and we'll read them off as they come along. I did see Jill made a comment. She said, this Mansfield teacher loves this. Note that the money new police campus in town. It rained inside my classroom this week. So I don't know if that.
Yeah, we oppose the presence of school resource officers. We find that another ridiculous waste of our property tax money. And Jill's school suffers. She has a leak in her classroom and has had it for quite some time.
Have they tried shooting at the leak?
Jill, have they tried shooting at the leak?
Oh, I didn't know if I was allowed to talk. No, I haven't shot the leak. But, yeah, I just wanted to comment, Laura, that making that public about selling was huge. So there were so many teachers that I know who were like, some of them are married to cops in town. And it was really important for them to see that and to share that video and say, like, look, this is what's really happening. And like, we're over here, like, I'm pulling buckets out of my truck to catch water in my classroom. And I think that was important for people to see just like how ridiculous things have gotten. And that was powerful in the town. It really was. I mean, people kind of knew about it, but you made it so that it was like kind of impossible to ignore. So thank you for that. Mansfield teachers very much appreciate that.
I'm very glad we did it because, that's my wheelhouse is the police. And yeah, he's just, yeah. But I mean, now it's like it kind of backed them into a corner too. It's kind of like, consequences of his own actions. Kind of had to find him unfit by the end of it all. So,
well, that's a credit to you. I mean, there wasn't
all
anybody
of
else
us.
in town willing to step up and call it what it was. So I appreciate
All
it.
of us. Nick's idea was the milk carton, and that really resonated. I mean, even Ryan Katz said, would you care to explain the milk carton to people who might be a little younger and don't recall what the symbolism of the milk carton is? So yeah, but unfortunately, we're still paying his salary.
For now.
As we know, the system sucks, but at least people now know what's going on and they know the machinations of it. They released the investigation. And if you read the investigation, they sound like a room full of like 12-year-olds in a community center that are bullies, that are put in a room in timeout. The way they bicker and argue and, and everybody in town got to see it. So that's a good thing.
I think the disparities in like the municipal budgets are highlighted by things like that, because people will look at what was spent on the new police campus versus, we haven't had a new school built in town in, 20, 30 years, and all our buildings have fallen apart. So it highlighted that and it really started a conversation. So at the local level, that was great.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, one of the questions I had was, what were like some of the practical issues of even like setting up the Workers' Party in Massachusetts? It sounded like you had to get some signatures for a petition, but did you have to like set up a nonprofit entity? How much, red tape did you have to jump through to even get established?
So yeah, Laura mentioned the political designation is you need 50 people to sign a petition, which sounds easy. We're like, oh, that's easy. We'll bust that out in less than a month. Every person who signs the petition needs to have what's called a voter registration certificate, which is something you get from your town clerk or city clerk or board of voter registrars if your city or town has them. No town clerk in the state seemed to know what this was. We'd go in, we'd say we need a voter registration certificate. And they give us something different. So it took us almost a year, mainly because of COVID bureaucracy, not being able to go in, do everything by mail before we could get the town clerks to issue us the right paperwork. But the state of Massachusetts gave us the political designation as soon as we turned all that in. The next step is to create a political action committee. We spent some time looking into like what kind of, there's really like there's no handbook, real handbook on how to start a political party. And it varies state to state, but in Massachusetts, you set yourself up as a political designation and then a parallel political action committee to support the candidates of your political designation. And then you can fundraise. It's basically, it allows you to create a 527 organization. That's the tax status. We're not a 501c anything. We don't make enough money to file taxes or anything, but so once you get a statewide candidate that hits 3% of the vote, or if you register 1% of the voters, which I think is, I forget what the number is on that. I think it's a little over 50,000 people. You become an official party in Massachusetts. And then your structure changes from a PAC to an actual state party committee like the Democrats or Republicans. And that allows you to set up local party committees. So that would turn our locals into, that would allow them to, do political fundraising as well too. We didn't push too hard on political fundraising. We set some goals of doing some mailings. We hit the goals, but it's we don't want to be an organization that asks people to donate a lot of money to political campaigns, because political campaigns suck. It's if you think of all the things you could donate money to in the working class movement, like paying for votes is, not something anyone wants to do, but you do need some money to get out there. And, some of the people we've run against spend like $5 per vote. We spend pennies for our votes. We're getting way more bang for our buck as the Workers' Party. And, I mentioned before those mailings that we did for outreach, that's kind of the advantage too of being a PAC or a candidate, is you get those voter lists. And everywhere we did mailings, we got a slightly higher voter turnout in our favor. So but mainly the structure is setting up the political designation and then the PAC, and then trying to get the 3%. We're hoping in 2024 to run a candidate against Democrat Elizabeth Warren, and that will be our statewide candidate, because we're probably not going to have a presidential candidate.
That's great. So you were talking a little bit earlier about, it seemed like a strategic decision to run candidates on the state level rather than the municipal level. I don't know if you wanted to go more into like the reasoning behind that beyond just like, municipal, it's harder to designate a political affiliation, or like why you choose which offices you're running for, even on the state level.
On the municipal thing, one thing I mentioned is Massachusetts has nonpartisan municipal elections. So if you, your name gets on the ballot, but there's no party. So unless you can, when I was a member of the Communist Party in 2013, I ran for town council in Weymouth, and local media picked up on the fact that I was a member of the Communist Party. There were two pretty big news articles about it, and everyone in my neighborhood knows my politics. I grew up here. It's a small enough district that it kind of became a campaign issue. But unless you can, like, if you run a city council campaign in like Boston, unless you like go out and knock on every door in the city and tell people you're a socialist, nobody's going to know on election day. So we wanted to run candidates where voters would go in and see the name Workers' Party on the ballot, and at least have that little bit of propaganda on the ballot, even if they knew nothing about the candidate. And statewide kind of allows you to talk about more issues too. Local elections, you're dealing specifically with like school budget issues. I mean, you can talk about cutting the police budget, but that only goes so far. You can't really speak about international issues. You can't. It's hard to talk about imperialism and all as a local candidate. Even statewide, there's some limitations, but like we do what we can in our program. Like the Massachusetts State Police do training in the apartheid state of Israel, so that's addressed in our program, even though we're only statewide candidates. So you sort of have more.
Brennan Griffin is on is in municipal government. He sits on the planning board in Whitman, but not as a Workers' Party member.
Well, I mean, he does what he can as.
Does what he can. He does whatever he can, but he
was elected before he became a member of the Workers' Party, and I mean, people in the town know his politics, but it's not. He's not on the ballot as a Workers' Party. It's not listed in the town government that way.
I guess I wonder if there's like any sort of strategic vision on building out municipal level power with candidates, because I would imagine like in Virginia, there's been a lot of controversy around school boards and the Department of Education and these pushes either around issues of like book banning or trans students or things along these lines. So I don't know or even school resource officers with school shootings, there's been a big push like, we need to get more school resource officers in the school. So I didn't know if like you saw a utility in trying to get members of your party in like municipal level offices, like on the school board or whatever, and as an ability to like further push your program even on the municipal level.
I mean, as we grow, I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it. It just hasn't been we've been pushing the state level in legislative and statewide candidates just to try to build a statewide organization. I think now that we do have locals that are really meeting regularly, having consistent membership and tied to the communities we're organizing in. I think as we go forward, we could definitely be running candidates for those seats. We've had some of those issues around here. We've had the right wingers showing up at the school committee meetings, book bannings happening, people attacking drag queen story time. So there's definitely a future for that. But you mentioned how we chose candidates to run. I mean, we basically asking people to run for office is a lot. It's Laura's laughing. We weren't always laughing during the campaign.
No, we weren't.
It's stressful. We basically asked any working class person who agreed with our program to run, and our original plan in October of 2021, we wanted to have 5 legislative candidates and a statewide candidate. And we only ended up with 2 legislative candidates and 1 statewide candidate. We need to do more to encourage people to get involved and participate. I think showing that you can do it and get a respectable showing, I think will hopefully pull more people in. I think it would be great to have at least a half dozen legislative candidates in 2024 in all parts of the state. But and then following that, once we really start building our experience, thinking about if we're going to be a real statewide party dealing with municipal elections, and thinking about how we start linking up with other groups and doing something national. At some point this can't just be limited to Massachusetts. And of course we know it can't just be limited to the United States. We're part of an international working class movement. So
We have had inquiries from Rhode Island and, bordering New England states about, oh, are you going to expand here? And the answer to that would be, yeah, but you'd have to build your own state party. And that gets kind of difficult because, like, I live 15 minutes from Rhode Island. So a lot of people that will help us out, like on an action and stuff, will say, well, can you open a chapter down here? Well, no, you can't. It has to be, each state would have to open their own because of electoral rules and processes. But yeah, people have already been starting to ask about expanding, which I think is very, very, makes me very optimistic.
That was going to be one of my questions is, why did you all choose to start on a state level versus not national? Because, there are a lot of leftist or socialist communist groups, they proclaim themselves as the National Revolutionary Party. You're like, was it based more so on like what you thought was actually feasible, or what?
Building from the bottom up, like if you're actually thinking about it, right? It's actually taken your own area, your own community, and building from there. And kind of, I think, and I mean, Nick's gonna say what he thinks, and I think he probably agrees. With the processes in place as far as elections, election laws are a little bit different in every state, that this is the way to do it, state by state. And then once you have enough, then maybe build a national. It's not something, I think, I'm suspicious of people who like rush into something and say, okay, I'm going to build this big giant national organ. I'm going to have it done, within 6 months. I think we're doing it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, with the focus on electoral politics, and the variations of laws state by state, we wanted to try to do something on a statewide level that others could possibly copy. And like the sheer logistics of trying to start a national organization from scratch. I have been foolish enough in the past to be part of an effort to do that. I was part of a small group in the mid-2000s that tried to launch a small communist party. It was a lot of work that amounted to nothing but some minor embarrassment that we've all recovered from. One of the people involved in that project actually signed up to become a member of the Workers' Party today, so it wasn't all for nothing. But that's a long, windy road. Generally, the idea of organizing a nationwide party was just too much, and even Massachusetts seemed pretty daunting at first, but now that we're getting some organizers around the state, it's feeling a little easier.
And Nick got over 50,000 votes. So I think that's quite amazing. And for as we've only been around now since 2020. So I was very pleasantly surprised when we saw the returns come in. And when we saw, like, little rural town next to mine, I didn't think I'd get any support there. And actually Norton was one of my better showings. When Nick's numbers started coming in and your numbers in Brockton, those were really good. Your numbers in Brockton were really, really awesome. And then Brandon's percentage was just, that's great. But you can't do that, I don't think, if you start and go, okay, I'm going to go national. Let's build this big, bureaucratic. It's just too much.
Yeah, I guess building off of that, one of my other questions is, what goals do you have when you're running candidates, right? Because so much of the criticism from the people who are caught up in the two-party system is like, well, third parties are pointless. You're wasting your vote. You're wasting your time. You're never going to beat these two corporate parties, right, that are so well funded. So what are you actually trying to achieve with this?
We're using the electoral platform to build our movement. and get the word out.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I mean, Laura sums it up real briefly, but to elaborate on that a little, there's a Marxist tradition going back to the advice Marx gave to the Communist League in 1850 about running candidates even when there's no prospect of winning, to get our program out there, to gauge the sentiment of the masses. This is really the best way to. I mean, we've kind of talked about it from a lot of socialist groups go out there and try to reach like ones or twos or like fives and tens, maybe even if they're lucky, hundreds of people. But finding a way to break out of that and reach like thousands or like over 1 million people, however many people voted in Massachusetts, saw the name Workers' Party, whether they liked it, whether it's sunk, getting exposure, getting the idea in people's heads that the working class needs a party of our own. Not just calling for it abstractly, but actually creating, something on the ground, something you can use. We're talking kind of before this started about getting the labor movement away from the Democrats. I don't think we can do that until we build something outside of the Democrats. I don't think the labor movement's just going to walk away into nothing. There needs to be something to walk into, or be pushed or pulled. I don't think they're going to walk freely anywhere. I mean, that's a whole other fight and discussion, but there needs to be something there for the working class, for organized labor, for all of the social movements. Just abstractly calling for a party doesn't do it. So running candidates on our own, we've put out 2 calls for a socialist electoral alliance in Massachusetts. We tried to encourage other socialist groups to run their candidates, and we're willing to share experience and help other people do that. We'd like, we want more people doing this. We want more socialist organization in places it doesn't exist. And I mean, personally speaking, I've, started out as a Maoist, spent some time in Trotskyist movements. I've sold newspapers to unwilling people on street corners. This is some of the most rewarding work I've done. The left isn't always rewarding, but most of us, I think, in the Workers' Party who have struggled being in different organizations before, kind of feel good about the prospects of how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what I like about the way we did it too is when you do it on a state level and you do things, you're out there and you're campaigning, your neighbors and your community members will come to you and tell you what their issues are. I had people walking up to me at the laundromat saying, my landlord is such and such, and I saw you on the news, and he gives me this problem. You get to learn what the struggles are that you might not otherwise know about in your own community, and I think that's important too.
Yeah, I mean, from our experience, the Virginia Worker Publication, we have local groups scattered across the state, and we're all trying to do our own like localized mass work, whether it's tenant unions or labor union stuff. And it feels like a lot of times it is just like ones and twos or fives and tens of workers you're trying to reach. And so it sounds like you all are able through the electoral campaigns to reach a much broader audience with the politics and the message. And otherwise it just feels like, you're just so isolated.
Spinning your wheels.
Yeah. So also, I wanted to segue into like, what has been the support in the unions, and like, what is the Workers' Party approach to the unions? Like, is there like a specific section of your program dedicated towards winning over, the unions to the Workers' Party?
Nick?
I mean, I got a fair amount of support. Most of the financial support for my campaign came from people in my union and other building trades members. I've been doing work trying to gather leftists in the building trades for a while in the Boston area, and that's kind of some of those people were involved in putting together the Workers' Party, so we sort of have a little bit of a stronghold there. Kind of doing anti-racist work, getting hard hat stickers out. We our program calls for expanded workers' rights, calls for supporting union struggles wherever they break out. We as I mentioned before, trying to put together a labor commission to really coordinate that work a little better. We didn't get any official union support for any of our campaigns, but that's not really unexpected. All of the unions in Massachusetts are, firmly aligned with the Democratic Party. But I've noticed lately we've been the Massachusetts teachers unions have been having a wave of strike actions, and there are a lot of it's illegal for teachers to strike in Massachusetts. So, in a sense, all these people who you'd never expect to be labor radicals, like the suburban school teacher is all of a sudden criminalized and meets some radical statewide teacher organizers. This seems to be like every time there's one of these illegal teacher strikes, they start following our Instagram page. Like these teachers union pages keep finding the Workers' Party page. I don't know how it's happening, but we want to do more work to try to bring more union members in, and maybe start thinking about some electoral strategies for work within unions, because at some point we have to start taking over those structures too. I've been on my union's e-board. My union has a whole bunch of issues, as most building trades do. And that's another thing too. I think you really need a movement within the union before just getting, single candidates elected. So you can really have like a reform slate and program to make real changes, because otherwise you just sort of end up in the bureaucracy. And I found in my union I can get more done on the floor at a union meeting than I could as a member of the e-board. But if you could take over the whole e-board, then that changes. But that's something bigger for down the road.
So what do you all say to people when they're saying, like, your efforts are actually harming oppressed identities because you're taking votes away from the Democrats, and like
I just point out what
them for being
we just point out what they actually accomplish and do. They fund the police. They support qualified immunity. They don't support you getting any health care. They don't support any of that. They honor Joe Biden and Marty Walsh right after they busted a union. I think you were at a protest outside of that, weren't you, Nick?
Yeah, I went to the Biden protest when he was in Boston. When they were breaking the rail workers' potential strike. It's we do have a little less of the lesser evil argument thrown at us, but I think a part of that is people aren't fully taking us seriously. I think as we grow, we'll be dealing with that more. But I mean, pointing out the role of the Democratic Party as a capitalist party, they uphold the system. They're part of the duopoly. They certainly don't support oppressed people around the world on all the drone bombings done under Obama, or the people locked out of the border by Biden, or locked in cages by Biden, who, everyone stopped caring after Trump wasn't president. There's plenty of criticisms to make of the Democrats in Massachusetts. And because they are the party in charge, this is something when me and other people in the party who were in the Communist Party back like 2014, 2015, their whole thing is, we have to defeat the ultra right. And our argument was, well, we live in Massachusetts. We've kind of already defeated the ultra right. And now what? And no one ever really wanted to answer that question, and that's kind of what we've been, pushing for is like, allegedly the ultra right's been defeated in Massachusetts. We have a Democratic supermajority. It should be, some type of liberal utopia, but for people on the bottom, it's not. It's we still have poverty. We still have neoliberal austerity in Massachusetts. The Democrats, co-opted the $15 an hour campaign. That the 15 just went into effect this year, way too late. And they took away, we used to have overtime on Sundays for retail workers. They just took that away for no reason. It wasn't even a concession to the Republicans. It was just a concession to big business. So we got a litany of complaints against the Democrats that we can throw back against that argument.
Yeah, I definitely think maybe there's a little bit of a difference there between your state and ours because, Democrats like to claim like, when they got majority last governor and like on the state level, they passed all these quasi, reforms like expanding collective bargaining to municipal level workers or decriminalizing weed or abolishing the death penalty. And now we're dealing with a Republican governor. And so it just seems like there's this very strong argument in the South to promote what I would say is like a popular front type politics, which is like the leftists here are sort of expected to tail the Democrats because the Republicans are the primary threat and we're on the verge of fascism or something, which on our editorial board, I would say we disagree with that sort of an analysis, but it does feel like it is a very predominant sort of position in the South. And I would say even maybe nationally too, with the whole January 6th thing, right? Like the threat of democracy was at stake and all of this. And so I guess I'm sort of curious how you all have responded to that narrative and.
I mean, it's not super strong here, and we haven't really faced it on any national questions, but just north of us is New Hampshire, which I think has more of a Republican bent than most of New England. So I'd like to see in the future some socialist candidates run to New Hampshire to see how that can play out, because I think anywhere in the country, if you can reach people with a revolutionary working class socialist program, you can find you can cut through the bullshit and find the people willing to rally around it. There's always going to be people on the left who just want to surrender to liberalism. It's like death, taxes, and opportunism are three things like we can't seem to avoid. And I think the best way to confront that is to, put forward an independent working class perspective and do it consistently, and working people will rally to it. One thing we've really tried to do is not pull Democrats or liberals or like exclusive, like a lot of people are focusing on trying to transform DSA. We're really trying to reach out to people who just really haven't been touched by the left before, or maybe have but live too far away to actively participate in things, and really rally the advanced, and see what we can do after that to win over people who are more sitting on the fence.
The alienated non-voter is what I say is the demographic that we're after. I've had people actually ask me that. I've had, I think, a little more of that than you have, Nick. As far as oh well, you're going to cause these reactionaries to win, and you're going to oh, Chief Sullen, he's not that bad. There's worse than him. And he at least wants to do some good things. Well, the good things he wants to do are problem-oriented policing and, really sticking surveillance in there. And that was also exposed in the investigation. But I mean, if you go for Democrats, like materially with what they get passed, there's really not going to be any difference. I don't care what part of the country you're in. And I've had people say to me, well, what if you offend like these middle-class white women in the west side of Mansfield? I said, they're not the demographic that I'm after, so I don't care. And people look at me like, what do you mean? And I'm like, if they want to join us, it's fine. They're welcome. But they're not the people that we're targeting. Oh, well, what would you say if they wanted, you to go a little easier on this? No. What I like about the Workers' Party and what we're doing, Democrats can say, okay, this is our party platform, and then not support it. Our program, what you see is what you get. We may differ like on little things, but what the voter sees is what we're going to represent, what we believe, what we're going to push for. We're not going to say, okay, we believe in defund the police, but it's not ever going to happen and it's going to offend these people. So we're going to compromise and do some reform that hasn't worked before. That's not what we're doing. And that resonates with people because they're tired of getting promises, to get a vote and nothing happening. And if you say, well, what about the platform? Why did the Democrats even do a platform? We don't stray from our program. There's going to be little differences here and there, but what you see is what we're gonna push. And I think that's important. I think that politically you need to be clear to people what you're offering up and what you're about. And that's why, like, I was a little nervous at first when we started this. Nick said, no, we're going to be straight up front about what we are, what we believe. We're not going to shy away from it. And that goes a long way with the voting public. Oddly enough, it's what I've figured out during this endeavor. Because it's really important to have actual principles that you follow. Be a principled party. Don't just be a marketing scheme.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how important the party program was for you all, and how do you, enforce that internally? Because, like, say, look at the DSA, right? Like, they've had multiple conventions, they pass these resolutions, and then their electeds just totally ignore those resolutions, which is supposed to be the highest decision-making body in the organization. And then there's no actual consequences for them, violating those resolutions of the conventions.
No, we're pretty serious about our resolutions, aren't we, Nick?
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't, we're still a fairly small organization. Everyone who joins is asked to read the program and, decide whether or not they agree with it. It's a volunteer thing as far as regular membership goes, and we haven't really, none of us have come close to winning office yet. So the temptations that come with actually being like an elected politician, is something down the road. But I mean, history has shown, studying especially the German Social Democratic Party prior to World War I is the model of, wasted potential and, opportunism rising in the ranks because of an inability to keep the elected people, in line with the program. There are other issues there. Basically, a poor understanding of the capitalist state in general. A whole lot of lessons to be learned, but you can't allow. Like we talk about the possibility. I mean, we believe there's a possibility down the road, a couple election cycles, if we keep growing, that we may get a couple people in the state house. We don't expect to be able to enact any legislation there. We would function as a pure opposition, use the bully pulpit. You give us a bigger platform to speak out. But yeah, I mean, we don't have any illusions about what we could accomplish there. But if someone, were elected there and decided to vote in favor of like the Massachusetts State Police budget or, something else, we would definitely denounce them, renounce their party membership, refuse any support for them in future elections, and call for them to step down. You need to have any public member of the party. In our constitution, we say, it has to like represent our party fully when they're doing public work.
So just a few more questions here. I guess, what do you think have been y'all's biggest successes? And then also like, what are the biggest issues you all are facing in building out the party?
Do you have anything on that, Laura? Or?
Biggest issues, I think, is just the logistics of it. It's a lot of work. And I think in the beginning, it was a little harder because there were fewer of us. I think as we go and we've pulled in some really quality active members. So even though we're not huge yet, we have more, and the people that we have are good quality people. And it's just kind of a build as you go kind of thing. But in my experience, it's the logistics of it. I don't know about you, Nick, but that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's hard to, it's just hard to tie everything together. We're getting a lot more experienced organizers, so the burden is definitely lessening. But for a while, there were a few of us and a lot of work. I think that this year is definitely going to have a lot of like internal growth. New people stepping up to take on tasks that a few of us have been doing. I know one thing that I learned, I think what all of our candidates learned the last time around, is we need to give each of our candidates a campaign manager. That was a big lesson. It's really stressful. It's just really stressful to run a campaign. You need to have someone really deal with a lot of the bullshit that a candidate has to deal with, and let the candidate be the candidate. I know that's one thing we'll definitely be tighter on next time around. We could see what of I mean, I think our greatest success as an organization was pulling together and getting the we needed 5,000 signatures to get me on the ballot as a candidate.
And we did it.
And we started late, and I mentioned the difficulty of doing it, and there was a point where we were in a statistical death spiral where like it seemed impossible that we'd ever get the signatures, and we ended up getting some really good help from people stepping up and pulled together and did it. That achievement was probably like getting that done was as
amazing.
big an accomplishment as the actual vote total in the election. But we've got a bunch of people now who are basically professional signature gatherers. We could probably go get jobs doing it for other parties if we wanted to. And I'm looking forward to next time around just hitting the ground running, and that will be it will be easy next time because we went through the hard work this time. That's the thing with all of this, all of these tasks. The first legislative run, we had no idea what we were doing. We did a better job the next time around, and in 2024, I think we're going to come out of it as at least I think we have potential to be the biggest showing third party in the 2024 election.
I think another thing that Nick forgot to mention that I think is important in respect to his signatures is they changed the number of signatures he had to gather at virtually the last minute. It went from like 3,000 to 5.
No, that was 5 the whole time.
Was it 5?
Yeah.
I think I thought it started as 3.
No, that was 5.
Okay, all right.
So I guess I was curious too, like it seems ever since Biden got elected, right, a lot of these left groups have really been stagnating, dwindling, seeming rather like directionless, without a rudder or anything. And just whether it's DSA or other organizations. I don't know if you all had experienced that, or it almost sort of sounds like you all have been weathering the storm and not dealing with that.
I mean, that's something that a lot of groups, the term some of us have been using is it's a lot of groups sit around and then wait for something to happen and then sort of ambulance chase. And that doesn't necessarily make it like if someone gets hit by a car and needs a lawyer, like ambulance chasing isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's reactive. I think a lot of the movement is waiting for something to happen and then respond to it in the form of a protest. Like there's been a recent revival of protests with these police killings. Right before the big thing down in Memphis, there was a high-profile police shooting in Cambridge, which was bringing people out into the streets. So those movements have kind of coalesced, but it's there's a lot of waiting for other stuff to happen, and I think that's a symptom across the left. I've seen it in organizations I've been in the past, and it's another reason I think that participating in elections always gives you some kind of constant. It's not always the most exciting work, but it's every 2 years in Massachusetts there's legislative elections. You can count on that. It's like a central task. You can be thinking about ways to get your program out, and then when other things spontaneously break out, as they will, you have a political movement on the ground that can tie into these rather than sort of keeping your people. I feel like some organizations try to keep their membership like in some kind of cold storage. It's like something happened, thaw everyone out, get them in the streets, and then like put them back on ice. And I've felt like that as a member. Like, what are we doing? And it's like, oh well, there's nothing happening. It's like, well, make something happen.
Gotta make something happen. Yeah, got to make it happen. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like this was like some criticisms of electoralism I'd encounter where it was like, well, we have such limited resources and what are you really going to get out of running the campaigns? Wouldn't it be better to just dedicate your resources to like labor organizing or other types of like organizing amongst the working class? Do you ever feel like the efforts behind the party have pulled you away from doing the mass work and amongst the working class reunions or whatever?
I think it's augmented it. I think it's complemented it. That's how I've experienced it anyway. I don't know about you, Nick. And I think a good like what happened with the police chief in Mansfield is an example of that. And Nick had a run-in with is it Trader Joe's CEO when they were having union action and he was collecting signatures. It was beautiful. But I think that when you do this, they definitely can complement each other, and you're going to pull more people in because you're trying to make the workers' movement a household name. People see it, they're aware of it, they recognize it. That's what I think. I'm pretty sure you agree with me, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, most of my union work, I'm not a union staffer, so like I'm with my fellow union members when I'm on the job. So like when I'm at work, I got, opportunities to talk to people about politics and union stuff. And, it doesn't, being a candidate allowed me to talk more about politics than I normally would. people I worked with who normally wouldn't want to talk about socialism abstractly, just by running for office, they've gotten more interested, checked out the party program and stuff. Yeah, I don't think, we've been able to participate in any of the big protests when they break out. We just got our new Weston Mass local is going to be participating in a police brutality protest out in Weston Mass this weekend. It's one of our first coalition efforts out there. So, just by running for office, we allowed us to, set up that local in Weston Mass. So it is all tying together and building off of each other.
So with like building out the party, like what do you think are like basic or essential structures or organs to have for a party? Like, does that include like a party newspaper or other infrastructure?
I feel like newspapers are hard to sustain. I mentioned earlier I was in a small communist group that tried to form a nationwide party. We tried to put together a journal. We put together an issue and a half. I'm not a professional writer. I can, churn out my thoughts if I have to, but I feel like if you don't have the talent and the resources to put together something good, then like it seems like with the Virginia worker, you've really focused on putting together like a news source that's coalescing people. You picked a task and seemed to be pretty good at it. I've even before you reached out, I've definitely gotten a hold of some of your articles, read them, agree with a lot there. But the us putting together like a newspaper right now, I feel like there's questions about whether or not a newspaper is even outdated. At some point I've talked about, maybe putting together like a free paper given out to like commuters on the subway, but the old school model of selling a newspaper for $1 on a street corner, I've done that in the past. It doesn't really reach people. We have our social media, which a lot of people think we're just a meme page. I think it would be good if we could develop some more content, but the algorithms on social media, you share a serious article and it doesn't get any reach. You share a good meme and, 5,000 people see it. So, you get what you get out of a lot of that stuff. It sucks, but, we put together a statement and share it on social media platforms and nobody sees it. We've mainly been focusing on our organizational structures. We sort of have a loose statewide committee that makes we meet monthly. That's our main decision-making meeting. Trying to have a regular convention, which would be the highest body of the party, to determine our structure and deal with our changes to our program as we need it. And forming locals that are easy to join. Having local organization on the ground, and going from there. Like to develop more like political education materials, basic like members handbook that could help people like run meetings and stuff. We've been talking about putting that together, because a lot of people grow up in this country, there's no like civic participation. No one knows how to like put together an agenda and like actually have like a structured discussion where you get something done at the end. So working on some of that, and that's what I got on that.
Yeah. So sort of to build off of that, I guess, what do you think is like a basic worker party positions to have? Like if other people in other states are like, yeah, I'm going to build out a state level workers party. Like, what do you think are just like the essential positions, principles to be having when doing this, and things you just cannot compromise on?
We've sort of broken our program down. We have 6 basic principles. I'll probably mess up the order, but basically like for socialism and against capitalism, like right off the bat, need an analysis of the system you're living in and, you know, articulate what you're fighting for. So like an understanding of that, you know, and the need for political power of the working class arising from that. Political independence, you know, independence from parties of capitalism is another one. You know, the Democrats and the Republicans are capitalist parties and they don't serve our interests. We need to be solidly anti-oppression, opposing all forms of bigotry, anything that divides the working class and weakens us. So we need to be fighting for solidarity. And, you know, that of course goes to the next point, which is, you know, internationally, you know, we don't, our solidarity doesn't stop at our borders. We're internationalists. We oppose imperialism, you know, primarily by our own ruling class, which is the most dangerous in the world. And we need to have an eco-socialist perspective because, you know, we're literally reaching the point where we might not even be able to survive, you know, like socialism or barbarism. You know, we might just have socialism or extinction at, you know, at this point. So, yeah, I think that's our main points that all of our demands and principles flow from in our program.
Yeah, Andrew asked sort of in relation to what you're saying last about trying to build out sort of resources and materials for new members and stuff. They were wondering, you know, what would it take financially for the party with regards to like developing a handbook and a broader reach. And that sort of ties into a question I had about like, you know, how much money do you need to do this sort of work, you know?
I mean, money for a handbook, it's more the work of putting it together, and I'm hoping that's going to be like a collective effort leading up to our convention. Printing, you know, is fairly cheap for something like that. It wouldn't even, most of it would probably be online anyway. But as far as like running campaigns, I raised less than $2,000 in my first state rep campaign. I raised we raised most of our money through the PAC this time around. So we had set a goal. We bought 5,000 postcards. That was a few $100. We spent a couple, maybe $1,200-1,500 on postage. Postage was the most expensive thing of our campaign. Those were really our biggest expenses. We spent a couple $100 on yard signs. We spent a couple $100 on stickers and banners. I mean, we're, as an organization, I think still well under $10,000 for 4 campaigns, and you know, paying for our nation builder, you know, stuff like that. We don't have a required dues rate. We don't really lean on our members. We ask people to do a small monthly sustainer if they can. And you know, when we were doing our fundraising for the postcards and mailings, you know, we did a specific, you know, targeted outreach to people. But I mean, down the road, I think at some point we're going to need some type of statewide office once we get more membership. You know, so whatever costs that would add, but I think having a space to like centralize some of our work, being able to, you know, put all our resources in one space. But I don't think that's on the immediate agenda, but it's not prohibitively expensive to run candidates. And you know, one thing I learned on my first campaign, you know, like I bought 100 yard signs for my local state rep campaign without realizing most of the people who vote for me are renters and their landlords don't let them put signs in the yard. So I still have a significant amount of yard signs in case I ever happen to run for state rep again. I don't have to buy anymore, but thinking about things like that, how not to waste money. This time around, we went with just generic workers' party yard signs that you can basically put anywhere and get the message out. So little things like that, but it's not impossibly expensive.
Yeah, I mean, normally a lot of the encounters I see of either justifying for running as Democrats or not bothering us all is it's just cost prohibitive, right? And the laws are written against independent political parties, and which it's like, yeah, that's true, but it's not impossible, which I think you all have been demonstrating. And sort of to build off of this is my last question here for the night, but just what is y'all's long-term vision for the Workers' Party in Massachusetts?
You got anything, Laura? I can answer, but
Just to continue with what we've been doing and let it lead where it's going to lead. But I'll let you go, Nick. I mean, my big thing is we got to do something about these police. That's my current priority. But as far as the party and what we accomplish, I like the direction that we're going, and the working class is going to lead us there. The working class is going to get us there, building from the bottom up.
I mean, all of my political work ultimately is hopefully leading towards some type of socialist revolution. A lot of linkage between here and there. So I mean, I hope we can play a part in that. I hope we can sort of help revive the idea of revolutionary socialist participation in electoral politics. And maybe someone comes along and does it better than us. That's perfectly fine. Like, we're not declaring ourselves to be the vanguard. We're trying to do something different and really like model some different behavior that other people can try. Because a lot of the left is really isolated. I feel kind of encircled. We've got some urgent, pressing tasks, a lot of them, and we really have I feel ripe ground to organize that people aren't necessarily taking advantage of. I became a communist in the 90s during the Clinton administration, like the worst time to become a communist. And I've just seen the terrain get better and better for organizing. And at the same time, a lot of the groups have gotten smaller and smaller. There's been like little brief upsurges, but people are still acting like it's the 90s and capitalism is triumphant, and it's not. The working class has like lost faith in the system. There's been several waves of the Occupy, the 2008 collapse, COVID, this fucking bullshit war in Ukraine while people can't afford to heat their houses. Like it's adding up. So yeah, just helping to raise consciousness and push the working class towards where we got to be.
Great. I really appreciate you all taking the time to answer all these questions and presenting on y'all's efforts. It's very inspiring. I think we share a lot of the same ideas, and hopefully we can get to y'all's point here in Virginia. I think that that's one of our goals as the Virginia Workers, helping constitute our own Workers' Party of Virginia, and doing something similar along y'all's lines. So thank you again, and definitely stay in touch. Maybe we'll do updates here in the future too.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having
Thank
us on. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.